what does it mean to be financially average in America? Does that mean you get a C and C is passing? Or, unfortunately, does it mean you get an F and your finances and your retirement is at risk? Unfortunately, it means you've got an F. It doesn't mean you can't improve. It doesn't mean you can't get to a C and then a B and then ultimately to an A. And that's what today's video is about. I'm going to share some stats with you, but more importantly, at the back half of the video, I'm going to talk about what we all can do to move up that ladder, to move up the grading curve. So let's talk about some numbers first. The average American, the average balance in a 401k in America is $35,000. Now that's nowhere near enough to retire. I think we know that. And you might say, hey, Azul, that's the average, but that includes 21-year-olds as well as 65-year-olds. So how does that break out by age? And the way it breaks out by age, and that's a good critique, people in their 30s, the average, this is according to Fidelity, which is the 401k leader, people in their 30s average $50,000 in their 401ks. People in their 40s average $120,000. And people in their 50s average $204,000. But remember, we're trying to survive probably a 30 or 40 year period. So that's really not much money. What ends up happening to a lot of people, once they get behind on the savings curve, they end up living paycheck to paycheck. They're in this negative cycle, and the winners of the negative cycle are the merchants that are selling us stuff that we don't need, the credit cards that are giving us easy debt to buy things that we don't need and turn what should be thoughtful purchases into impulse buys. So the credit card company wins, and you know who loses? You and I lose. And I don't want to see that happen to you. I've shared some of these stats in my other video. It's not just people that are making minimum wage that are struggling to get by. 50% of people making over $100,000 a year, half the people don't save a dime. And that's absolutely ridiculous. That needs to change. And 1/3 of all Americans have no money saved at all. They couldn't afford to pay for a $1,000 car repair. Again, it's the banks that win, not you. I want you to win. I want you to be the A student. I'm filming this in an airport, and there's a photo of what was probably Dick Rutan's aircraft that went around the world nonstop. That's kind of behind me. It's blurry, but him and Jeannie Yeager did this 20 or 30 years ago. It was a non-refuel nonstop. Now they get a grade A for that. They get an A+ for that. And I want us to get an A+ on what we do. So how do we break the choice? How do we break the cycle, right? We have just two choices if we're not saving enough. We either need to make more, or we need to spend less, or we need to do both. And as I shared earlier, half the people making $100K a year don't save anything. So it's not enough to just make more money. So the easy thing for us to talk about first is how to cut expenses. But before we get there, if you're enjoying this video, and I apologize for the noise, it's windy outside, which is why I'm recording this here. But if you're enjoying this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about subscribing and leave me a comment. And yes, I know it's loud in the airport. I apologize for that. Okay, so how do you cut expenses? A lot of people will tell you to cut out the Starbucks and things like that. I'm not a big fan of doing that, right? Those are what I call affordable luxuries. The reason Americans are not saving money is not because they're going out for Starbucks. Yes, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to make your own coffee at home, and it's going to taste the same. But if that's an affordable luxury for you, if that is the way that you connect with your friends after work, that's the way you and your spouse, I should say, you and your spouse like to hang out on a weekend day and catch up, that's money well spent. So I look at the big ticket items. And the biggest ticket item, and I know people get upset with me when I mention it yet again, but the difference between driving a new car and a used car, the experience is very similar. If you buy a new car, the average new car, even just a normal car, nothing fancy, the average new car now costs about $50,000, and with all the transaction costs and the taxes. But if you buy that used, maybe you can buy that car, and I know used car prices have gone up, but maybe you can get that car for $25,000 or $30,000 with 25 or 30,000 miles on it, or even more miles, right? A lot of people like to buy cars that are 3 to 5 years older or old. I like to buy cars that are even older and have more miles, because a lot of cars are good for a lot of miles. So again, when you're looking at cutting expenses, I'd look at the big expenses first. Unfortunately, transportation tends to be the second largest expense for American households. It's just under $1,000. So I think that's an easy place to cut. If instead, the number's about $900 for the average household. If you can cut that back to $500, right? That $400 that you save, that's going to give you an extra $5,000 a year. And for a lot of people, the average employee makes $50,000 a year, so that goes from a 0% savings rate, that extra $5,000, to 10%, and you've made some progress there. A couple more things is credit cards. If you're not paying off your credit card at the end of the month, really try to have a lot of discipline and ask yourself, do you really need it? Think about things that you've bought in the past that maybe in hindsight are impulse buys. Maybe you don't need to buy those types of things in the future, and just try to get yourself out of situations. Don't kill time at a shopping mall. That can be an expensive hobby. So that's my thoughts on cutting expenses. Now, the other place that you can make a big difference is by improving your salary. And oftentimes that feels very daunting to people, right? I mean, the basics are you've got to upgrade your skill set. What is it? I'm looking for a term, but I can't remember it. But you need to just basically step up the value of the skill set that you have. And I'll give you, for instance, my daughter was making minimum wage when she was 17, 18 years old, and she spent a couple weeks becoming a CNA, a certified nursing assistant. Took her a couple weeks to do that after work. Cost less than $1,000 for her to learn that skill. And she started making $5, $7, $8 an hour or more. And if you multiply that by 40 hours a week, that's an extra $250, an extra $300 a week. And that can pay for some additional training to go from a CNA to something else. Maybe she decides to go to a coding boot camp. And with that money that she can save up in 6 months, she can pay for a coding boot camp. And that can take her from minimum wage to $25 an hour is what she was making as a certified nursing assistant. And then you graduate from a coding boot camp and you can be $60,000 to $100,000. So these are the things that can help improve your current situation. So if you like the idea of making more money, one of the things you can do is I've got a video over here where I talk about how to invest an extra $10,000. I think you'll find it super helpful. And until next time, I'm Azul. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.